Welcome back to my channel. My name is Peyton. This is my husband Colin joining me in today's video. If you're new here, we are both ex-Mormons or post-Mormons, whatever people want to say. Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Anyway, Colin removed his records from the church, so he officially is not a part of the religion whatsoever. My records are still in the church, but I am not active and do not intend to go back. We are doing this series on my channel for deconstructing the CES letter and just sharing our opinions and views on everything. Colin has read the CES letter in its entirety, but it's been a while, so he's also kind of refreshing on all of it. And I've never read through it. I've heard different things about it, and so far we have 2 episodes out already where we started going through it. So I've technically started through the first bit. Today we're going over the book of Abraham, which I've heard a lot of controversial stuff regarding the book of Abraham. So I'm really intrigued to go through this and do a deep dive and learn a lot more about it in detail. I intend to ask a lot of questions that I think viewers might potentially have, whether you've never been a member or you have, or this is, you know, new information. I try and ask questions that I think maybe viewers might have, and Colin kind of tries to help me out. But just to preface, this is all our opinions and our perception on the CES letter and the church. Both of us were born and raised in the church our whole lives, very active. Colin served a mission in Chile. I was working on mission papers when I met him, so I almost went on one. And we genuinely loved the church, and it was a big part of our lives, and it was very painful to find out a lot of this information and leave. And we just want to share for those who are interested, people in the church who may have never heard this before, people who are just interested in religion in general, for people who say, you know, we're spitting out stuff that's false doctrine or not true. We encourage you to give us your reasons as to why you think this is not true. If you have sources that point to information where this may be incorrect information and we can all learn, we want to know what that is. Yeah. So leave sources in the comments if you have rebuttals to any of this, because we want to learn and we want everyone who's watching here to learn as well. So do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, it's Peyton's channel. I don't, you know, check in probably quite as often to the comments as she does, but I will also try and get on there and engage. The only people that, like, I'll ignore the comments is if it's just like a generic, like, attack or laughing at the argument. Like, I'm not offended by that in any means, but there's just really not much to engage with there. So like she said, if you have like sources or like other things you want to like talk about or whatever, just leave it in the comments, and I try to get in there and respond at least like once or twice a week. So
yeah, there's someone who tries to harass me all the time, and he tried to respond once after like so long, and it was like against YouTube community guidelines because he was like cursing and stuff. And so I was like, my man, I
usually ignore them, but like at a certain point, I'm like, I will respond, and then I realize
that's my wife you're talking about.
I realized my comment was censored, so I was talking to a wall. So nobody can see it. So, but yeah, I mean, the CES letter as a whole was kind of a big part of my deconversion or loss of faith, however you want to, deconstruction. And a big one was the topic we're going to talk about today, which is the book of Abraham. There's quite a few reasons why. Now, granted, I haven't actually read this section all the way through for probably like a year now or more. So it'd be interesting to go back through it. And yeah, like I said, if you have any like disagreements or questions or anything, leave them in the comments, and you can even just like put my name or tag me and just, you know, I'll try and jump in there and respond.
Yeah, I can put your username in the description. Colin actually has quite a few YouTube channels. He's not super active on a lot of them as far as posting yet anyway, but he's got some channels. Oh no, a kid just fell off his bike. He looks like he hurt his leg. Is there nobody out there?
I don't know if his parents are out there. I'm gonna go
He's
look.
Like holding his knee. The kid was fine. But yeah, Colin has The one you usually use, I think, is C. Haws vids or something like that. And
something like that.
I can have it in the description. He has like.
We can also just go in and make a comment from me first on the video so people can see that it's me. We could do that too, so that they can reply or do questions or whatever. But we can do both ways.
Yeah.
Okay, so you want me to just kind of start on this?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, this is the Book of Abraham section in the CES letter. And this is a quote from the LDS Church's essay on the Book of Abraham's translation. So, none of the characters on the papyrus fragments mentioned Abraham's name or any of the events recorded in the Book of Abraham. Mormon and non-Mormon Egyptologists agree that the characters on the fragments do not match the translation given in the Book of Abraham. Though there is not unanimity, even among non-Mormon scholars, about the proper interpretation of the vignettes on these fragments, scholars have identified the papyrus fragments as parts of standard funerary texts that were deposited with mummified bodies. These fragments date to between the 3rd century BCE and the 1st century CE, long after Abraham lived. That sound good? You got that?
No, man, but we can just move on. I don't.
Do you want me to give you a brief summary?
Sure.
Yeah, so basically the story goes, so Joseph Smith, somebody was traveling through where the saints were at the time, and they had these mummified bodies and like some like old documents from Egypt. Joseph Smith bought them from this guy. He used those documents or scrolls or whatever they were to the papyrus to translate what is now the Book of Abraham. Well, they originally thought that eventually those ended up in like the Chicago Museum, I think, and it burned down. And then they thought it was like lost, but then they ended up finding like fragments, you know, portions of the actual papers that Joseph Smith used. And, you know, this was a point where we then knew how to translate things out of Egyptian and realized that these were just like common funerary texts. And they didn't mention Abraham because this obviously would have been, if like you assume that Abraham was a real person that lived and whatever, this would have been much longer after he would have already died. So that's kind of what this is saying. The church is acknowledging that Mormon and non-Mormon scholars agree that Abraham's not mentioned anywhere on those texts.
But Joseph Smith said or wrote that about Abraham and said that it was all this stuff, and they're like, this is not what it.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah, and so then the next couple points we're going to get into is going to kind of dive into that a little bit more. So maybe I should have read into this before giving that summary because this will probably do it a little bit better. Do you want me to keep going or did you want to read it?
I could read some.
Okay, go ahead and read like point 1 maybe.
Okay, first point says, originally, Joseph claimed that this record was written by Abraham by his own hand upon papyrus. The claim still prominent in the heading of the Book of Abraham. This claim could not be evaluated for decades, as many thought the papyri were lost in a fire. The original papyrus Joseph translated has since been found, and as stated in the Church's July 2014 translation and historicity.
It's a big word. Historicity.
Historicity of the Book of Abraham essay. Whatever. Scholars have identified the papyrus fragments. Historicity. I can't. Okay. Sorry, I'm laughing at myself. Does anybody else get anxiety just like reading in front of
This is like reading in front of the class when you're a kid.
It's like spell the. You're like, Scholars have identified the papyrus fragments as parts of standard funerary texts that date to between the 3rd century BCE and the 1st century CE, long after Abraham lived. We know this is the papyrus that Joseph used for translation because the hieroglyphics match the chronological order to the hieroglyphics in Joseph's Kirtland Egyptian papers, which contains his grammar and alphabet of the Egyptian language, Gael. Additionally, the papyrus were pasted onto paper, which have drawings of a temple and maps of the Kirkland, Ohio area on the back, and they were accompanied by an affidavit by Emma Smith verifying they had been in possession of Joseph Smith. Should I just keep going?
Sure.
Or do you have something? I did not read that very well.
No, I think that kind of covers. That's kind of a lot of the stuff I tried to cover in the summary.
Yeah.
So I think we just keep going.
Okay. Point 2 says Egyptologists have also since translated the source material for the Book of Abraham and have found it to be nothing more than a common pagan Egyptian funerary text for a deceased man named Hor.
Yeah.
Around 1st century.
You don't have to enunciate it like that.
I whispered. Okay. That's not the opposite of enunciate. Hor. What are you saying? Hold on, I'm laughing like a man.
You added an accent.
Okay. In other words, it was a common breathing permit that the Egyptians buried with their dead. It had nothing to do with Abraham or anything Joseph claimed in the translation for the Book of Abraham. The church admits this in its essay. Oh, that's not good.
I think this is similar to what I read earlier at the beginning.
Oh yeah, maybe it's just reiterating none of the characters. So we can just paste that on the screen.
We'll just put that on there while you're reading that part and they can see the actual quote. So yeah. So then we go into a section talking about the facsimile. So there's a couple drawings in the back of the Book of Abraham that were kind of like damaged when Joseph Smith got them, and he essentially filled them in through inspiration, or I don't know exactly how it was said, but what we know now, we actually know what these images are and what they're supposed to look like, so they can compare them to what Joseph Smith filled in and kind of compare like what he got wrong about it and how wrong it was. So this might be worthwhile. We'll put these up on the screen too so that it can be like seen. The graphic below shows the rediscovered papyri placed on top of facsimile 1. The red circles denote the filled-in sections of facsimile 1 that respected modern Egyptologists say is nonsense. In contrast with the canonized version of facsimile 1, the following image is what facsimile 1 is really supposed to look like based on Egyptology and the same scene discovered elsewhere in Egypt. So, like, this is how he filled it in, and this is what it's supposed to look like. So it's pretty different. And then you have anything to add there?
I felt like it looks pretty similar, and so I was just kind of confused.
So it'll go into the specifics, but like something that you'll notice here is look at the head here on the real one and there, and then the head of the bird is much different, and it'll go into the specifics. This is completely missing from up here, and this was added, so you'll see in a second. Following is a side-by-side comparison of what Joseph Smith translated in facsimile 1 and what it actually says according to Egyptologists and modern Egyptology. So there's a list here that we can put up too. It's kind of a big list, but
what is it explaining?
So the left-hand side of this column of this list is Joseph Smith's interpretation of these images. And then this is the modern Egyptological interpretation. So what actual Egyptologists have discovered what this actually was. So in Joseph Smith's, and I think, so they numbered it too with the list here. So for number 1, it's going to match up here. So number 1, Joseph Smith's interpretation is that was the angel of the Lord. And then this is the spirit of Ba, or the deceased fellow. And I don't know if we want to just like read through these one after the other or put them on the screen.
Yeah, I'm kind of interested. Okay. I'd like to.
So then for number 2 up here, we have the person on the table, and this says Abraham fastened upon an altar the deceased. In this specific case, his name was Or, however you say that.
Not Abraham.
Yeah. And then number 3, the idolatrous priest of Elkanah is what Joseph Smith put for number 3 right here.
Okay.
And then Anubis, and this is what I was showing from the original image, where it's like a horse head or a dog's head on a body. Anubis, the figure was originally portrayed with the head of a jackal. Okay.
Yeah, we don't have to do all of them, but I was kind of interested in some of them, and we can put the list up on the screen so that it shows them. But I'm still a little bit confused. I'm sorry. I don't know a lot about this kind of stuff. So...
well, most people don't, to be fair.
Was this just... in my mind, I'm thinking like, oh, he just has a blank sheet of paper and has to create, you know, whatever something is saying. Like, that looks like a really close image, like he would know kind of what he's doing. So I feel like I'm misunderstanding. Just because there's a slight differences,
So this goes along with the idea of like an inspired translation, right? So he has... this is what Joseph Smith was working with when he filled it in, right?
Oh, just that paper.
Was just the paper portion here. So you can tell he has a lot of the image to work with. And so he has like a lot of stuff to help him fill it in.
Oh.
We're just pointing out that the things that he did fill in and some things he didn't fill in seems odd that it wouldn't be in there if the actual canonized version should look something like this.
And he claimed to know what it would look like or something like that.
Yeah, so I mean, he's claiming that he's translating the papyri for this record that was written by Abraham. Like he's claiming this like divine translation, yet for this image, it's not just that like there's disagreements. Most people that study Egyptology and have looked at this say the facsimiles are just nonsense. He just filled it in with stuff that doesn't make sense and wouldn't have made sense in Egypt. So
I didn't realize that he had some stuff to go off of. I'm thinking like blank sheet of paper. I'm like, there's someone standing, someone laying down, a bird. Like he got a lot of it, but I didn't realize that he had...
So the papyri he bought off of that guy that was traveling through the area that had all these like Egypt artifacts. He bought some of these scrolls, which is what he translated the Book of Abraham from. But this one was damaged when Joseph Smith got it, so he like did this and then filled it in. And so this white part is what he filled in. So
okay.
Yeah, hopefully that clears that up a little bit. Do we want to kind of skip through some of this list?
Yeah, we can just put that on the screen. And then there are also sources underneath this. If you actually open the PDF version of the CES letter and go to the Book of Abraham section, which I will have linked below, underneath all of this, there are sources from the church, and then there are also sources from Mormon apologists.
Yeah.
And then I'm not sure what this number 9 one is. I don't know where that source is coming from, but
yeah, but as always, check them yourselves. Kind of, you know, everybody's going to have different, you know, things that they rely on for it, but it's always good to check the sources from both sides and see. So he has a lot of those listed here, so I always reference those. You can reference the apologetics for each argument, and then Jeremy Reynolds, who wrote the CES letter, has written debunkings of their debunkings. Essentially, he's responded to a lot of the apologists after they responded, so those are good to dive into as well. So do you want me to keep going?
Sure. I'm not sure what's to come next because I haven't looked at it at all, so I don't know like what's coming.
So figure number 3 is supposed to be the jackal-headed Egyptian god of mummification and afterlife, Anubis, not a human. The following images show similar funerary scenes which have been discovered elsewhere in Egypt. Notice that the jackal-headed Egyptian god of death and afterlife, Anubis, is consistent in every funerary scene. This is just kind of pointing out like there's different portrayals of this funerary scene found throughout Egypt, but each time that Anubis is portrayed, that's what his head looks like. He's got a jackal head, and yet in the Joseph Smith version, just to reiterate, it's just a person. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of a big, kind of glaring difference there. And then facsimile 2, the following is a side-by-side comparison of what Joseph Smith translated in facsimile 2 versus what it actually says according to Egyptologists and modern Egyptology. So this is going to be like probably another long list here.
Oh, so he just went off of this, and then there's a side that shows what Joseph said each of these numbers.
Yeah.
I'm translating number 10 and all of this stuff versus what the actual experts say.
Yeah, so this one is going to be a long list because there's a lot of things on here that were, you know, labeled or I guess interpreted by Joseph Smith. So we'll put this up, but we don't want to go through each one individually because it's kind of a messy image and then also a very long list right after. But it's just important to point out that there are certain things that Joseph Smith labeled with specific names and specific things that Egyptology has realized is not what was being portrayed in those images. So it's just good to like point out that like a lot of this stuff is not even close or could even be interpreted in any way that it's the same thing.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like number 3 says, God sitting on his throne, clothed with power and authority. That's what Joseph Smith identified number 3 as. And it's like Horus Ray riding on his boat.
Yeah.
That's like so different.
Yeah, so, and I'm pretty sure like, I'd have to go back and brush up on some of the apologetics, but I'm pretty sure one of the arguments is that the papyri was really just like a catalyst. It was like something that sparked the inspiration for him to create and write the Book of Abraham. It's just odd that, I mean, I guess you could make the same argument for the facsimiles, that he wasn't actually like doing like a literal interpretation. He was just using it as like inspiration to, but it's weird.
Like,
some of these don't match
it this way.
Yeah.
But okay. I could also see some people saying that, you know, maybe because Joseph had the inspiration from God that he's actually correct and that these experts are wrong. I could see people saying that too.
Yeah.
But I'd personally, like, if I was still an active believing member of the church, I think I'd personally be okay with the argument that the way he interpreted it and the way that he applied it to his life and like wanted to share that with others was good and helpful. So who cares? I feel like that's what I would say as a member. But I mean, as somebody who wants to dissect and go through all of it, like, it's definitely like one of the little red flags of like how I try to think of a different word than fraud because it sounds very mean, but I just feel like, I personally feel like Joseph made a lot of stuff up or kind of was kind of playing along, you know, and I wasn't there, so I can't know that, but this is just one of the little red flags, I guess. So I don't want to say.
Yeah, I mean, none of us were there, so we all have to take the evidence that's in front of us and interpret it however it makes sense to us.
I would love to find information that says, you know, Joseph did have good intentions and stuff, because that would genuinely be my hope. I just don't see it that way right now. Yeah,
I mean, he very well could have had the best intentions and could have even at that point believed it himself. So, but anyways, like the one thing that I did want to point out, like from this image, you see number 17 here, it's just a bunch of characters. And Joseph Smith, in his interpretation, I passed it. Oh, right here. Oh, so it's for all of these things. He just put one explanation when really for all these things, there's just so much content there that's been interpreted by Egyptologists. So a lot of it was just like brushed over and missed too.
Well, I feel like it could also be explained that the experts that came along brought the information to the world in the time that the Lord wanted it to.
Yeah,
I could see people saying that. I really, like, hopefully it's apparent that I do try to understand both sides like, when I am doing this. But
yeah, no, that's definitely the fair way to go about it. I mean, 22 and 23, there wasn't annotation by Joseph Smith, but we do know that these things did have meaning. So again, sources are listed, and so dive into that, look into the apologetics, yada, yada, yada. Keep repeating myself. But
I'd rather have him say, I don't know, than make some stuff up.
Yeah, I definitely try to get more comfortable saying I don't know, especially with like things that I'm learning, because I would rather admit that I don't know so that I can look into it later and figure it out. So, okay, so now we've kind of gone through those charts to kind of just show the differences in the interpretations between what Joseph Smith put in there and what Egyptologists have, you know, learned about the Egyptian language and the way that they crafted these funerary documents. So now we're going to get more into sort of Jeremy Runnell's explanation of like why this was disturbing to him, what questions he has about it, some of his commentary more. So he goes on to say, one of the most disturbing facts I discovered in my research of facsimile 2 is figure number 7. Joseph Smith said that it is God sitting on his throne. It's actually Min, the pagan Egyptian god of fertility or sex. Min is sitting on a throne with an erect penis, which can be seen in the figure. In other words, Joseph interpreted that his figure with an erect penis is Heavenly Father sitting on his throne. Now, to be fair, the part of the document that Joseph Smith had, that part was missing from the facsimile that we saw earlier. I don't want to scroll all the way back up. And also, I want to say as like another resource, just to put it out there, Robert Rittner is a very famous Egyptologist. He did a bunch of interviews on Mormon stories. It's a very long series with multiple episodes, but he talks specifically about this stuff, and he knows as much as anybody about these facsimiles and like what should be in there. So those are really interesting if you want to like go deep into this subject. But yes, that is one of the weirder things that I heard like on the interpretation of the original text. So
that's kind of hilarious.
Yeah. so that is that's a shocking one.
Look, he's God. He's
Yeah.
got to be blessed.
Okay. Don't go too crazy.
For reference, we don't believe in God, so we kind of like and joke about stuff like that. We don't read disrespect to anybody else or their beliefs. If you don't like our sense of humor, you don't have to watch our videos. It's fine. I won't be offended.
Yeah. Okay, so then the following is a side-by-side comparison of what Joseph Smith translated in facsimile 3 versus what it actually says according to Egyptologists and modern Egyptology. So we have another list here. It's just important to point out that, you know, for figure number 1, he says that it's Abraham sitting on Pharaoh's throne by the politeness of the king, yada, yada, yada. Over here, it's not Abraham. This is Osiris riding above figure.
Recitation? That's like...
Recitation by Osiris, foremost of the Westerners. So the point here is that we know who these characters meant to the Egyptians, who they were and what it meant to them, versus what Joseph Smith put on his interpretation.
Yeah, he's like taking an entire culture and rewriting, you know, everything around what all of it means, when in a way, like, I feel like you can do that like as your own like personal thing if you want. For somebody who likes to write like fictional things, you can take a certain scenario and rewrite certain stories as your own. But I think it can also be disrespectful to take somebody's entire culture and like rewrite it and interpret it as like fact and truth, as if like they were wrong, they were incorrect. Like this is
and honestly, I mean, in no way was Joseph Smith, I think, insinuating that they were wrong. I think it was him just not understanding what was in front of him, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense.
He was kind of, you know, he didn't know Egyptian just as anybody around him didn't know it, so. Yeah,
and that makes sense. Sometimes I have to try and think and give, you know, how do you say it? Benefit of the doubt? What is it? How do you say it? Is it benefit of the doubt?
Yeah. That's the expression.
It feels
I don't
like
know how
I'm
you're
saying
using
it wrong.
Yeah, but that is the expression.
Sometimes I just feel like I need to do that for him, because if you think about the fact that there was like no Wi-Fi, no internet, as far as like a lot of the things that in my opinion were plagiarized in the Book of Mormon, you know, he would have no idea that there was ever a possibility that people would be able to figure that out or find that out.
And truthfully, I mean, there were a lot of different, the time period in America back then, like there were a lot of churches that grew out of that time period, even in that specific region. So he certainly wasn't alone in the things that he was doing. Yeah.
And you could say or make the argument that, you know, he was reading these stories and had these dreams, or his dad had these dreams, and maybe he felt that these were inspirational dreams or ways of writing. Like these things were put in front of him as inspiration from God to write these things. Like, write in this kind of language. You had this dream because this is something that truly happened, you know. That's when there's a part of me that hopes that there's some way that there can be information or interpretations of like Joseph Smith where you can show that he did have good intentions. The next episode will be on polygamy, I'm pretty sure, and that's where it all goes down the toilet for me with him. But it didn't before, but when I learned more about what that all entailed, it all went down I keep wanting to say shitter.
Okay. Let's see here. Oh, there was another one I wanted to point out that I thought was interesting. So then for number 2, Joseph Smith says that it's King Pharaoh, whose name is given in the characters above his head. Egyptology says this figure is female, not male. Writing above the figure says Isis the Great, the god's mother. So completely different. And the same thing happens later. For this figure is female for number 4, Prince of Pharaoh, King of Egypt, as written above the hand. And then this figure is female, not male. The writing above the figure says Mot, mistress of the gods.
Yeah, number 3 says it signifies Abraham in Egypt, as also given in figure 10. And this says it's
a libation table.
Wine, oils, etc.
Yeah,
like
so for
completely different thing.
That's number 3 right here. So for number 3, it's a table that is holding these wines and oils and stuff. And he's saying that it's signifying Abraham in some way. So yeah, it's another just interesting table. Go through it, see what the differences are. Look at the sources, see what they say, see what the apologetics say, and it's kind of interesting some of the arguments that are made on both sides here. And then let's move on.
I could read some if you want.
Yeah.
Number 3 says, respected non-LDS Egyptologists state that Joseph Smith's translation of the papyri and facsimiles are gibberish and have absolutely nothing to do with the papyri and facsimiles and what they actually say. For facsimile 1, the names are wrong. The Abraham scene is wrong. He names gods that are not part of the Egyptian belief system of any known mythology or belief system. Facsimile 2. Joseph translated 2 figures on the facsimile. None of the names are correct and none of the gods exist in Egyptian religion or any recorded mythology. Joseph misidentifies every god in this facsimile. Facsimile 3. Joseph misidentifies the Egyptian god Osiris as Abraham, misidentifies the Egyptian god Isis as Pharaoh, misidentifies the Egyptian god Mot as the prince of the Pharaoh, misidentifies the Egyptian god Anubis as a slave, misidentifies the dead Or as a waiter, and Joseph misidentifies twice a female as a male. So yeah, and I think the reason that a lot of this is important, if you're not interested in the like Egyptian stuff at all, and you're like, I don't even care, that's all like too much for me to even get into. It's just Joseph claiming that he has this inspiration from God to translate certain things. And when you, like, we don't have access to the golden plates because in the Mormon religion, it's taught that Angel Moroni took the plates back up to heaven. So there's nothing that we can see or identify or try to translate today.
Yeah.
And so when there are scripts or things that Joseph had that he translated that we still have access to, and seeing that it's all incorrect, completely wrong, not the same whatsoever, it's like that could have.
Yes, I mean that was a big thing for me. I mean, for the Bible, for example, we have these ancient manuscripts that the Bible came from that we can compare, and as we learn more about the languages, we get new translations, updated translations, etc. So we can kind of know where things were translated incorrectly or whatnot. With the Book of Mormon, you obviously can't do that, and that to me is problematic because you don't know, you know. The faith-based position would be that it was translated by the gift and power of God. And, you know, there's the quotes of it being the most correct book of any book on earth.
Which has been changed thousands of times.
Well, yeah. And the hard thing is there would be no way to know that without being able to see the source text and be able to verify that it was even translated correctly, that it was even, you know, so. Yeah. That's a hard claim to back up.
Yeah. And there's a lot on that I heard growing up. That, you know, it's for the members of the church to be able to show and prove their faith in God and this religion and everything like that. And that kind of thing just doesn't resonate with me anymore. I don't appreciate just a simple, I don't mind if people have faith in things, but when I'm trying to learn about something and, you know, grow my knowledge in a certain area, just saying that I just have to believe something because you're telling me to, I'm trying to learn here, so that's not enough for me. I need something else. But I know that works for a lot of people, so that's fine. It's just not for me.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, what I was going to add on for what you were saying and why I said it's problematic that we don't have the source text for the Book of Mormon. So as a believing Mormon, like, we have the Book of Abraham that was this separate translation. Well, if that's the only translation that we can check against, like, what he got from the source text versus what it actually means, and it was completely wrong, that kind of undermines my confidence in trusting the Book of Mormon. Whether there were plates, which I don't think that there were. I mean, I think it's possible that he like would have made some type of like plates, but I don't think that there were actually plates that were an ancient record of people that lived in America, you know, a long time ago. So let's see here. And then number 4, do you want me to carry on from here? Okay. The Book of Abraham teaches an incorrect Newtonian view of the universe. These Newtonian astronomical concepts, mechanics, and models of the universe have since been succeeded and substantially modified by 20th century Einsteinian physics. What we find in Abraham 3 and the official scriptures of the LDS Church regarding science reflects a Newtonian world concept, just as the Catholic Church's Ptolemaic cosmology was displayed by the new Copernican and Newtonian world model. However, the 19th century canonized Newtonian worldview has since been displaced by Einstein's 20th century science. Keith Norman, an LDS scholar, has written that for the LDS Church, it is no longer possible to pretend there is no conflict. Norman continues, scientific cosmology began its leap forward when Mormon doctrine was becoming stabilized. The revolution in 20th century physics, precipitated by Einstein, dethroned Newtonian physics as the ultimate explanation of the way the universe works. Relativity theory and quantum mechanics, combined with advances in astronomy, have established a vastly different picture of how the universe began, how it is structured and operates, and the nature of matter and energy. This new scientific cosmology poses a serious challenge to the Mormon version of the universe.
Interesting, because I will say through my faith deconstruction, I fell in love with science and learning about, I've always loved certain aspects of science and psychology and how the brain works and stuff, but it moved towards like physics and space and everything. And I didn't even know the CES letter talked about stuff like that. So I got kind of excited when you were reading about it. And I'm like, did Joseph say stuff about how the universe was created? Like, I don't recall.
Well, he's going to dive into it a little bit, but yeah, I mean, we have a son that is also very interested in space. And so certainly by no means does the LDS Church say don't study space or anything. And this is not like a specific LDS Church issue. This was just like, for some reason, as I deconstructed and wanted to learn more about like a more scientific worldview, it's something that I dove heavily into. He's going to dive into it a little bit more, but Grant Palmer, another Mormon historian and CES teacher for 34 years, wrote, many of the astronomical and cosmological ideas found in both Joseph Smith's environment and in the Book of Abraham have become out of vogue. And some of these Newtonian concepts are scientific relics. The evidence suggests that the Book of Abraham reflects concepts of Joseph Smith's time and place rather than those of an ancient world. I think it dives into those more later because I think I remember seeing, so we'll probably come back to those ideas unless there's anything you want to add right now.
Yeah, no, this one's just saying that there's more sources basically that back some of this up. Is that what this so each number is kind of a different issue. That's how he has it set up. Okay. So now we're moving on. So 86% of Book of Abraham chapters 2, 4, and 5 are King James Version Genesis chapters 1 to 11 and 12. 66 out of 77 verses are quotations or close paraphrases of King James Version wording. So when he says quotations and paraphrases, in these cases, so sometimes there are things from the Bible in the Book of Mormon and they're directly quoted, like at the bottom, there will be a footnote saying that this is from Isaiah or this is from here. Is he insinuating that that did not happen, or like why are we just copying stuff from there?
So this is more of a claim of like, if this was Book of Abraham written by his own hand and everything, he goes into it in the second paragraph here. If the Book of Abraham is an ancient text written thousands of years ago by his own hand upon papyrus, then what are 17th century King James Version texts doing in there? What does this say about the book being anciently written by Abraham? So the King James translation of the Bible came in the year 1600, thousands of years after Abraham would have written this himself. So he's saying, like, what is that doing in the text? It doesn't make any sense. And it's a majority of the text. 86% of these chapters are direct quotes from the King James Bible. So that's a lot.
Okay. I could see like a spiritual mindset of mine saying something like, you know, Abraham could have had, you know, this inspiration first, whereas, you know, whoever was writing in the King James Version of the Bible in those instances, had the exact same inspiration.
Yeah.
But I think logically it's just like, okay.
You would not expect to find, and you wouldn't even expect to find a 17th century translation of the King James Bible being translated the exact same way in the 19th century in the U.S. I mean, there's a lot of issues I see there with like why it would be the exact same.
Yeah.
Some of them are the exact same. Some of them are paraphrases. I do want to clarify that, but why is it so similar?
Yeah.
Okay.
I like holding your big biceps.
Okay. Number 6, why are there anachronisms in the Book of Abraham? For example, the terms Chaldeans, Egyptus, and Pharaoh are all anachronistic. Additionally, Abraham refers to the facsimiles in chapter 1, verse 12 and chapter 1, verse 14. However, as noted and conceded above in the church's essay, these facsimiles did not even exist in Abraham's time, as they are standard 1st century CE pagan Egyptian funerary documents. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So then we have a quote from here from the actual essay. Some have assumed that the hieroglyphs adjacent to and surrounding facsimile 1 must be a source for the text of the Book of Abraham. And then Jeremy comes in with his question, why would anyone assume that? And then he goes into the actual book here. And it came to pass that the priests laid violence upon me, that they might slay me also, as they did those virgins upon this altar. And that you may have knowledge of this altar, I will refer you to the representation at the commencement of this record. So like here we have the actual verse from it explicitly saying what it is, yet in the essay it's saying some have assumed the hieroglyphs adjacent to and surrounding the facsimile must be a source for the text of the Book of Abraham. So it's like, why would you assume that when the verse itself specifically talks about the facsimile in the way that Joseph interpreted it, you know?
Yeah.
Number 7, facsimile 2, figure number 5 states the sun receives its light from the revolutions of Kolob. We now know, however, that the process of nuclear fusion is what makes the stars and suns shine. With the discovery of quantum mechanics, scientists learned that the sun's source of energy is internal and not external. The sun shines because of a thermonuclear fusion. The sun does not shine because it gets its light from any other star or any other external source.
Oh, I didn't realize that Joseph or anybody ever said anything about that.
Yeah, so this is kind of how I said, like, we'd come back to some of these ideas. This is kind of going back to that science thing where it's like, in the book, it's telling us that, you know, the light comes from these revolutions of Kolob. Well, we now know that the stars produce their own light through their, like, thermonuclear fusion. So, like, obviously not something that would have been known in Joseph Smith's day. It would have been like any other ancient civilization posing that something is God or something is this, like, thing beyond our power or our understanding, you know, like the Greeks thinking that lightning was Zeus or, you know, something like that, like attributing it to something because they don't have an explanation for it. But now we do have an explanation, so this explanation doesn't make any sense. That's kind of a rant. Number 8. There is a book published in 1829 by Thomas Dick entitled The Philosophy of a Future State. Joseph Smith owned a copy of the book, and Oliver Cowdery quoted some lengthy excerpts from the book in the December 1836 Messenger and Advocate. I looked this up before. Messenger and Advocate was like a church publication back in the 1800s. Klaus Hansen, an LDS scholar, stated, the progressive aspect of Joseph's theology, as well as its cosmology, while in a general way compatible with antebellum thought, bears some remarkable resemblances to Thomas Dick's philosophy of a future state. Hansen continues, some very striking parallels to Smith's theology suggest that the similarities between the two may be more than coincidental. Dick's lengthy book, an ambitious treatise on astronomy and metaphysics, proposed the idea that matter is eternal and indestructible and rejected the notion of a creation ex nihilo. That just means creation out of nothing. So nothing existed and then it was created.
Yeah.
Much of the book dealt with the infinity of the universe, made up of innumerable stars spread out over immeasurable distances. Dick speculated that many of these stars were people by various orders of intelligences, and that these intelligences were progressive beings in various stages of evolution towards perfection. In the Book of Abraham, part of which consists of a treatise on astronomy and cosmology, eternal beings of various orders and stages of development likewise populate numerous stars. They too are called intelligences. Dick speculated that the systems of the universe revolve around a common center, the throne of God. In the Book of Abraham, one star named Kolob was nearest unto the throne of God. Other stars in ever diminishing order were placed in increasing distances from this center.
I did not realize that there was so much information on stuff like this. I did not hear about what Kolob was until I think I met you.
Yeah.
I never heard that.
I mean, there is a hymn about it. I mean, it definitely is like...
There's a hymn
yeah.
about it?
Yeah. You haven't heard that? You haven't heard that or sang that?
Do you know what it's called?
If You Could Hide to Kolob is what it's called.
No. I have never heard that.
Interesting. Yeah. So there is a hymn about...
I've gone to church every Sunday my whole life. Missed like 3 times ever being sick.
Yeah, well, not recently.
Well, no, I just mean...
yeah, no. So, I mean, that's...
growing up.
Yeah, so it is in canon, so to speak. I mean, it's in the scriptures, it's in the hymn book.
Someone in my high school told me that we believed we'd all be gods and have our own planets. I was like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And I asked my mom about it, and I remember her telling me that, like, that was true, and then I was like, that's kind of cool. Like,
yeah, well, the interesting thing is, like, it's not one of those things that you're taught that it isn't the case, but you're also oftentimes not taught that it is the case. Like, the focus isn't necessarily on you're going to grow up and get your own planet one day. It's just, like, about eternal progression and always growing and learning. But that is in the doctrine. You will find it.
I made a friend recently, and she talked about how she believes in a higher power, but she doesn't believe in any type of like controlling. She doesn't think that if whatever the higher power is, like if it is some type of like male or female thing, she feels like it would more likely be female because females create. And she was like, but really she just kind of says the universe and just believes like that there's a higher power that it like assists us in kind of like the what's it called, like manifesting, or like what you put out you get back kind of thing. She kind of believes in that sense, but there's no, you know, image or being necessarily in her mind. But she's like, if there was something, I feel like it would be female because females create. And I was like, that makes so much sense.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think too that a lot of us, like when we try, if we are religious or we have this idea of God, we don't have any choice but to interpret God or picture God in a way that makes sense to us individually. So there is an individual element to it no matter what. This is interesting. I wonder so I know that this interview is on YouTube. I wonder if they could splice the actual interview in because it's kind of interesting. Elder Jeffrey R. Holland was directly asked about the papyri not matching the Book of Abraham in a March 2012 BBC interview. This interview is pretty good. I've seen it before, but the interviewer asked, Mr. Smith got this papyri and he translated them, and subsequently, as the Egyptologist cracked the code, something completely different. Then Elder Holland, his response was, all I'm saying is that what we got translated into the Word of God. The vehicle for that, I do not understand and do not claim to know and know no Egyptian. So again, I want to put this interview in there because it is interesting to kind of like see the body language and stuff. But
yeah.
And then Jeremy goes on to say, I don't know and I don't understand, but it's the word of God really the best answer that a prophet, seer, and revelator can come up with to such a profound problem and stumbling block that is driving many members out of the church? Fair point, I feel like. The following are respected Egyptian scholars, Egyptologists' statements regarding Joseph Smith and the Book of Abraham. So we're going to go through a couple different statements. Do you want to maybe read through these real quick?
Sure. So this one is from Dr. James H. Bristead, University of Chicago, Joseph Smith Jr. as a translator. These 3 facsimiles of Egyptian documents in the Pearl of Great Price depict the most common objects of the mortuary religion of Egypt. Joseph Smith's interpretations of them as part of a unique revelation through Abraham, therefore, very clearly demonstrates that he was totally unacquainted with the significance of these documents and absolutely ignorant of the simplest facts of Egyptian writing and civilization. Dr. W.N. Flinders Petrie, London University, Joseph Smith Jr. as a translator. It may be safely said that there is not one single word that is true in these explanations. Wow.
Yes.
Dr. A.H. Sayce from Oxford, professor of Egyptology, Joseph Smith Jr. as a translator, said, "It is difficult to deal seriously with Joseph Smith's impudent fraud. Smith has turned the goddess Isis in facsimile number 3 into a king and Osiris into Abraham. In addition to the above, world-renowned and respected University of Chicago professor of Egyptology, Dr. Robert Rittner, provided a detailed response and rebuttal to the LDS Church's translation and historicity."
Not again.
How do you say it?
Historicity.
Historicity.
I mean, you can probably say it that way. It's just weird. Well, you actually, no, you couldn't say that. You couldn't say historicity if it's an I. Historicity.
Historicity. Provided a detailed response and rebuttal to the LDS Church's translation and historicity of the Book of Abraham essay that is sobering and devastating. Dr. Rittner's rebuttal to the Church's essay can be read here. It's linked in the PDF version. You can look it up if you want to.
I remember it's kind of lengthy, but it is worthwhile if you're interested in the topic.
The following video offers a thorough, complete, and unbiased overview of the Book of Abraham issues as well as the apologetic responses to them. An online contributor created an easy-to-understand document very clearly outlining the Book of Abraham issues. Contrary to what some Mormon apologists claim or imply, a person does not have to be an Egyptologist or a scholar with a PhD to clearly understand the Book of Abraham problems and challenges to Joseph Smith's claims of being a translator. Of all the issues, the Book of Abraham is the issue that has both fascinated and disturbed me the most. It is the issue I've spent the most time researching because it offers a real insight into Joseph's modus operandi.
His mode of operation is what that means.
Okay. As well as Joseph's claim of being a translator. It is the smoking gun that has completely obliterated my testimony of Joseph Smith and his claims.
Yeah. This is Jeremy saying, like, this was the one for me that, like, anything that was left that was, you know, protected from doubt, like, this just blew it all up because, again, like we say, like, this is our only document where we still have the documents that Joseph Smith was working with when he created it. And again, these quotes from the Egyptologists above, like, there's nothing that Joseph Smith did that was accurate to what we understand about these documents now.
Yeah. And I don't blame Joseph Smith for not knowing these things because this, again, you were saying something like this similar. This isn't something that the average person, especially during this time and not even now, would understand. So it's not like, ugh, like, look at him. He didn't even know this. He's so dumb. No, it's just he's claiming to have this divine inspiration and revelation from Heavenly Father and Jesus Christ, and he's using the same terminology in how he's translating the Book of Mormon, supposedly. And it's so the stuff that we have access to that he translated to this day, knowing that every single bit of it is incorrect, there's not an ounce of it that he did correctly. Is the Book of Mormon the same way? Very likely so.
Yeah. So, and that's the end of that section. I mean, next we'll go into polygamy and polyandry. So,
yeah. And that'll be in episode 4. And I've been basically putting out some of these CES letter episodes every other week, and then the weeks in between are kind of other
topics,
other little things. But yeah, I mean, I'd love to hear what you guys think about all of this, and if you have anything that you want to, you know, you have rebuttals for, or if you just want to share, you know, your own personal stories, or is this the first time that you've heard this before, or have you researched this before? And I don't know, just anything that kind of comes to mind, or if you have any video ideas or requests.
Yeah, especially if you have a different perspective. Like, I don't mind if you come in with like sources to known apologetics already, but if you have a different like idea or theory or something as far as that goes, it's always interesting to hear too. And like I said, I try and get in a couple times a week and check the comments and stuff. So if I do see anything, I'm going to try and interact a little bit more.
Yeah, I've kind of look at them almost every day, but I've been responding more so like once a week. I'll go in and just spend a couple hours just responding to everyone. So that's kind of how I've been doing it. But yeah, most of the people who've been watching these videos and engaging are not subscribed. So if you're not and you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to subscribe and like the video to help the algorithm push it out to more people. If you have any friends or family or anybody you think who could benefit from this information or just our YouTube channel in general, feel free to share it with them, and let's just like expand all of this and share this knowledge with, or not necessarily knowledge, share this information with other people who want to learn more about it. And just to reiterate, this is all our opinions and perceptions of something that happened that we were not involved in.
Yeah.
So, because a lot of people like to come for me for lying on the internet, and I'm like, dude, this is just information that's out there, and I'm sharing.
This is us reading somebody else's document and us interpreting it and how it is. We're not making absolute claims about any of it. But that being said,
if it makes people leave the church, like, that's anybody's
anybody's allowed to look at any of the sources and interpret them however they see fit. So
yeah, just like Joseph Smith interpreted those symbols.
Yeah. Exactly.
He just, except I'm not just lying.
Yeah.
Sorry. So yeah, don't forget to subscribe. Please give it a thumbs up. Thanks so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks, guys.
See you.
Bye.